Welcome to Love Lies Chronicles.
I'd really appreciate your comment. It helps me understand if you enjoyed the story and how I can improve in future ones. I heard it before I saw anything, the kind of laugh people use when they're showing off. It carried from the kitchen to the hallway, light and sharp against the tile. I had just come in from the garage, still wearing my work jacket, thinking about leftovers and a quick shower before bed. My name is Evan Price. I'm 38, an operations manager for a logistics company in Denver. I was reaching for a beer when I realized my wife had her friends on speaker. I slowed without meaning to. The laugh came again, and then the sentence that reset the room around me. I control him with one thing. Works every time. I didn't stomp in and clear my throat like some sitcom husband who can't take a joke. I just stood there with my fingers still on the fridge handle, listening to the cold hum of the compressor and the sound of my own breathing getting strangely deliberate. The fridge light washed my hands in a tired blue-white glow. I eased the door shut before it could make a noise and leaned back against the counter, just out of sight of the doorway. The voices were familiar, the same two she met for brunch, the same two who always said we should keep the spark playful, which I'd learned was code for treating our marriage like marketing content. She sounded energized, like she'd landed a promotion in a game. I don't remember her exact examples, not word for word, but I got the structure. If I pushed back on something, she'd freeze me out. If I disagreed, she withheld. If I wanted closeness, it became a bargaining chip. It's funny what your brain does in the first 5 seconds after you hear something like that. It flips through a mental Rolodex you didn't know you kept. Tuesday night 2 weeks ago, when she brushed past me like we were strangers because I said I couldn't make a last-minute dinner. The weekend I suggested we stay within budget on furniture, and she went quiet for a day. The times I reached for her, and she offered a smile and a promise for tomorrow, a tomorrow that usually slipped. You don't think betrayal. You think, oh, that's why? I didn't need to hear the silly encouragement from her friends or the fake concern about boundaries. I stepped away from the doorway and took the stairs like a man who remembered something he'd left upstairs. Calm, steady, no scene. Our bedroom was dim except for the streetlight pressing a pale bar across the wall. I sat on the edge of the bed and watched a dust line glow on the dresser. It's strange, the small things your eyes land on when you're trying not to feel anything big. I make schedules for a living, juggle bottlenecks, keep trucks moving across states in snow and heat and road closures. My job is to anticipate pressure points and remove them before the whole system backs up. That night, I realized I'd been treating our marriage like a system that would self-correct if I just kept working. Give it time. Offer patience. Suggest we talk. Plan a weekend. Try again. I thought consistency would set the tone. I thought effort was the answer. Hearing her say she controlled me with one thing turned the dials on all of that. I changed into a t-shirt and sat at my desk without turning on the lamp. The house had that winter quiet, furnace cycling, an occasional car on the street, distant muffled laughter from downstairs. I opened my laptop out of habit, then closed it again. I wanted the facts. The facts were simple. For months, she'd swapped collaboration for manipulation and dressed it up as normal relationship rough patches. She was training me. There's a clean, almost clinical calm that comes when the story finally clicks. It's alignment. I thought back to small signs I ignored because loving someone gives you good excuses. The way she scheduled our life and called it spontaneity. The performative affection around friends that shut off like a faucet the second the door closed. The subtle eye rolls when I suggested anything that didn't involve her crowd. The sudden interest in owning my power after the book club at the co-working space. I'm not mocking any of it. People grow. People try on ideas to see what fits. It was downsizing the marriage to a vending machine with one button she liked pressing. A text buzzed on my phone from a buddy at work asking if I was still in for a Saturday hike. I typed yes before I thought about it. Small word. Big shift. I realized how often I'd been the one to cancel those plans because I wanted to keep the weekend open in case she decided we were good again. When did I start living on standby? When did I hand over the calendar to a mood? Downstairs, laughter crested again. Then a door closed and footsteps moved toward the garage. She must have stepped outside with her phone for privacy, the kind she didn't think I needed when it came to my feelings. I lay back on the bed and stared at the ceiling fan blades. I thought about weight distribution, the kind you do with freight. Too much weight on one axle, you wear it out. Shift it forward, you lose traction. Shift it backward, you fishtail. Our marriage had been fishtailing for a while. I had kept correcting the wheel. She had enjoyed the slide. There's a temptation to dramatize these moments, to imagine flipping a table, to plan a confrontation that ends in a movie line. That's not me. I prefer plans you can measure. So I made one, and it started with a boundary so quiet she wouldn't hear it at first. The one thing she thought controlled me would no longer be something I chased. Just the removal of the lever from the machine. She came upstairs later, hair smelling like the expensive shampoo she buys with a coupon code and an influencer's discount. She set her phone face down on the nightstand like always. I looked over and said, "Hey." Normal voice. Neutral. She smiled back, soft and routine, and crawled into bed without reaching for me. That used to sting. That night, it informed me. Information is clean. It asks for action, not reaction. I didn't sleep much, because my mind was busy redistributing weight. I wrote a list in the Notes app. Gym before work 3 days a week, hike Saturday, call my brother, book the routine checkup I'd been postponing, oil change, new boots. Nothing radical. Nothing any man would brag about. Just small things that belonged to me, reclaimed without announcement. The kind of adjustments that make a system stable again. Somewhere around 2, the furnace kicked on, and she turned over, pulling the duvet tighter. I watched the streetlight stripe inch lower on the wall and thought about something my dad used to say when he taught me how to drive on the icy back roads outside Fort Collins. Don't overcorrect. Point where you want to go, then hold it. That's what I did. By morning, the house smelled like coffee and dawn. I went downstairs, poured a cup, and set out my running shoes by the door. She mumbled a good morning from the hallway, kissed my cheek, and asked if I was coming to dinner with her friends this weekend. I said I had plans. I watched the micro-expression, surprise quickly pressed into a casual shrug. I sipped my coffee and made a note to pick up trail mix for Saturday. Something was off, yes, but not just with her. With me too. I'd let the system run on a variable I didn't control and told myself that was love. That morning I adjusted the settings. The first test arrived quietly, the way winter sneaks up on this city. One extra layer of cold each day until you suddenly notice your breath. 2 mornings after I heard the call, she floated into the kitchen with that light mood she puts on like perfume when she's primed for a win. I was packing a protein shake and trail mix for the hike I'd already confirmed. She watched me measure almonds like it was a new language. Big plans? She asked. Yeah, early start. I'll be out most of the day. A tiny pause, the kind that measures obedience. We were going to look at rugs with Kara. But okay. Before, I would have offered to move things, meet them after, turn it into a couple errand. I said, hope you find a good one, and snapped the lid on the container. Her smile looked like it missed a step. Nothing dramatic. Just a small wobble in a routine that used to be hers. The week stacked similar moments. She initiated what I call the closed shop routine after I asked her to loop me in before committing our weekend to her friend's brunch crawl. She just went remote, polite, unbothered. Years ago, that used to send me into repair mode. Now I did my emails, hit the gym, and slept fine. The silence didn't feel like punishment anymore. It felt like weather. You bring a jacket or you don't. The clouds have no vote. Tuesday night brought the first real pressure test. A client's warehouse automation update had gone sideways, and I stayed an extra hour to stabilize drivers and docks. I texted her that I'd be late and to start dinner without me. When I came in, she had takeout on the counter and a look that said I'd missed my cue. We were supposed to go by Megan's, she said, stacking containers like she was arranging evidence. You said you'd make it. I said I'd try. We had trucks sitting for 40 minutes. I fixed it. She gave me the kind of smile people use when they're convinced you just admitted to a crime. Right? Work comes first. Tonight it did, I said, calm and uncolored. Tomorrow might not. That used to earn me a freeze so sharp I'd feel it in my teeth. She lifted a shoulder, took her food to the couch, and toggled the TV with the volume slightly higher than normal. I ate at the counter and read dispatch notes. On Thursday, she tried the old leverage trick over something small. The HOA had emailed about trimming the maple out front, and I'd booked a crew for Saturday morning. She wanted to do it next week because Kara was coming over to shoot photos in the living room and thought the latter would ruin the vibe. I told her the crew had an opening, and I took it. The smirk arrived right on cue. We'll see how much you miss me tonight, she said, almost playful, like a parent threatening to withhold dessert. Okay, I said, and rinsed my cup. She didn't expect the okay. The game needs a chase. Without it, she had to decide whether to be mad or bored. She picked bored and went upstairs early. I finished a spreadsheet, set my alarm, and slept fine. By the weekend, the pattern was lit up like runway lights. Every time I didn't bend, she moved to one of three stations: quiet removal, sarcasm, or sudden sweetness. I noticed the sequence long before she did. Saturday morning, while the tree guy set up, she put on the robe that used to deter any plan I had, even yard work. She wandered out with coffee and asked what I wanted for breakfast in that soft voice couples fall in love with. "I'm good," I said, checking the invoice. "They'll start in 10 minutes. Her face didn't crack, exactly. It recalculated. I could almost hear the gears. She tried a different angle, reminding me about an art fair downtown. I told her I'd already booked a tune-up for the car at 1 p.m. and planned to run after. Simple. Boring. Mine. That afternoon, she shifted to the second station. "You've been distant," she said, folding laundry she never folds, like proximity might summon the old program. "Is everything okay?" "Everything's organized," I said. "Work's heavy. I'm catching up on stuff I let slide." Let slide. Like sleep, cardio, oil changes, lunch with my brother. She heard the subtext even if I didn't underline it. Her jaw tightened. Then she let it go with a shrug that wanted to look casual. On Sunday, I decided to try something I should have done months ago: speak once, cleanly. We were making coffee at the same time, the kind of parallel choreography that couples either find comforting or suffocating. I kept my eyes on the mug. "I'm going to say this without a debate attached," I said. "When you pull back to influence me, it doesn't make me want to move toward you. It makes the whole thing feel cheap." She blinked like I'd opened a window in January. "I don't do that. I'm not asking you to agree," I said. "I'm telling you how it lands. I'm not playing along anymore." Silence. The water finished boiling. Something old in me wanted to rush, fill it, soothe it, offer a lighter version. I let the silence stand there with us and steam the air. She finally laughed, that practiced light sound. "You're being dramatic. I'm being specific." That line ended the scene without the usual messy third act. She took her coffee to the living room and scrolled her phone with thumbs that moved too fast to be calm. I took mine to the garage, cleaned the workbench, and put air in the tires. It's amazing how many small tasks a man lets slide while he's waiting for permission to live inside his own house. The following days tightened the screws. Whenever I held my line, she invented an audience. She'd narrate me to her friends on speaker like I wasn't in the next room. "He's on this new independence kick." The first time, I nearly laughed. Independence? From what? My own overaccommodation? I put on shoes and walked a mile before dinner. The air was cold enough to make the inside of my nose sting. It felt clean. Midweek, she weaponized concern. "You seem unhappy," she said, tilting her head with the empathy face. "Is it work? Is it me?" I was careful. "I'm clear," I said. "That's different from unhappy." "Clear about what?" "What I will and won't do," I said. "I'll listen. I'll compromise when it's actually mutual. I won't respond to tests." The word tests landed. Her eyelids flinched. She recovered fast. "You're imagining things." "Maybe," I said, and went upstairs to call my brother about fishing in the spring. I booked the cabin we always talked about, but never chose. The old script called for me to circle back after these moments, put a hand on her shoulder, and ask how we could reset. That script stayed in the drawer. I still did normal husband tasks, took out the trash, replaced the furnace filter, fixed the cabinet hinge. I was refusing to be steered by scarcity. She kept trying to sell me a drought. I started carrying my own canteen. The next Saturday, she arranged a double date with a couple who loves conflict disguised as banter. I said I'd pass and suggested she go without me. She told me it would look bad. I asked to whom. After she left, I cooked a steak, FaceTimed my nephew, and fell asleep reading without the TV on. She came home late, made just enough noise to register that she had returned, then climbed into bed without comment. The silence wasn't cold anymore. It was honest. The pressure built differently after that. Less smug, more tentative. She tried a direct appeal one night, sitting on the edge of the couch like she had news. "We should schedule a weekend away," she said, watching my face instead of the calendar. "Reset, you know." "I'm not against it," I said. "But a weekend is a gloss if the terms underneath don't change." "What terms?" "Respect isn't contingent," I said. And closeness isn't currency. For once, she looked at the coffee table like the answer might be there. The old lever had stopped working. You could see the moment she realized she didn't have a replacement part. I was steady. The man she thought could be her weather vane had turned into a post set in concrete. She could walk past and check the wind if she wanted, but it would never spin because she whistled. The decision didn't arrive with fireworks. It clicked in like a seatbelt, one motion, final. I stopped living like a man waiting for rations dropped from a helicopter that might never come. No statements. Just a quiet update to the operating system. I would not be trained by shortage again. The first change was subtraction. I took the lever off the table. At night, I read on my side, lamp low, shoulders loose. When a thought wandered toward bargaining, I brought it back like a dog with good recall. She noticed by the second evening. A hand on my shoulder, a playful tone, the robe she used like a switch. I smiled and asked how her day went. Morning routines hardened in the best way. Gym before sunrise, because my legs needed work I'd been putting off. The quiet weight room became a relief. No commentary or tests, only gravity telling the truth. I added 5 minutes to the rower each session and logged it without fanfare. Numbers didn't care who approved. By the end of the week, I was sleeping deeper, waking clearer. That alone told me how much mental bandwidth I'd been spending on walking the maze. I rebalanced my calendar. Lunch with my brother on Wednesdays, non-negotiable. Friday coffee with a friend from the old warehouse team. The guy who never says much, but always remembers birthdays. Saturday hikes stayed on the ledger. I didn't announce any of it. I just stopped canceling. The small flinches I used to feel when I pressed send on those plans were gone. It turns out anxiety looks a lot like permission you think you owe someone. She tried to pull me back with nostalgia. The playlist from our first year, the favorite whiskey set out next to a low glass, the old inside jokes that had been packed away and suddenly reissued. I laughed at the right places, thanked her for the poor, and went back to the spreadsheet I was building for a cost overrun analysis. Because I refused to make closeness performative, the phone became neutral ground. I stopped waiting for the buzz that meant the climate had changed, and I was allowed to be happy. I turned off half my notifications, left the other half for work and family. When she texted midday selfies with a caption that read "Miss me," I answered with "Meeting in 5, call you after." When she sent a calendar invite titled "Reset Weekend," I accepted it with a note, "Discuss terms first." She ignored the note and started browsing boutique cabins. I let it sit. Silence isn't a weapon if you don't swing it. Mine wasn't punishment. It was the absence of a chase. When she went cool after a decision she didn't like, I didn't patch it. I let normal life sound like itself. Dishwasher hum, laundry tumbling, ESPN low in the background. The home stopped feeling like a test site and started feeling like a place again. Work sharpened. Without the domestic tug toward constant appeasement, I made one call I'd been avoiding. I told a client that our team wouldn't eat their rush fees just because their procurement manager forgot lead times existed. I offered the real timeline, the real cost, and alternatives that saved them money if they learned to plan. The client respected it. At 5:40 p.m., I shut the laptop and didn't check emails again until morning. She escalated to proximity. Movie on, blanket half shared, her leg finding mine. My body had memory of being rewarded for caving. Memory can be retrained. When she leaned in, I let it be what it was, present, small, not a contract. She withdrew first, surprised that warmth could end without a credit attached. Friends invited us to a game night with people who love performative affection. Before, I would have used the evening to showcase how fine we were. This time, I said I had an early morning run and suggested she go. She stayed home and sat beside me with her phone, scrolling without reading, glancing up to see if I'd ask what was wrong. I only ask questions I intend to carry to the end. I made one symbolic move that mattered only to me. I set up a second pillow on the couch in the office, the spot I use for reading and short naps. I didn't sleep there. I just made it ready, a quiet declaration that peace had options. Knowing I could choose space without theater made the bedroom feel less like a negotiation table. There was a moment midweek that could have undone months of clarity if I'd still been the old version of me. She came home in a dress that made the room quiet, hair down, lip color she uses when she wants a yes. She stood in the doorway and smiled. It was a real smile, I think. I stood up, walked to her, kissed her forehead, and told her she looked incredible. Then I went back to chopping vegetables. She watched me slice peppers, waiting for the invitation that never arrived. Later she drifted over, arms around my waist, that familiar press into my back. I covered her hands with mine, felt the warmth, breathed once, and stepped aside to drain the pasta. I could feel her confusion in the way her hands fell away. Control had been replaced by contact. Contact wasn't enough. Quiet boundaries accumulated. I stopped debriefing my day to someone who weaponized detail. I kept the stories I wanted to share and gave the rest to the people who actually asked. I moved my running shoes from the closet to the front door like a man who expects to use them. I replaced the dead porch bulb without asking if the warm tone matched her palate. I scheduled a dental cleaning. You learn fast how much of your life you deferred to someone else's temperature when you start booking appointments again. One night, she broke the pattern. No play acting, just a straight question across the dark. Why don't you want me? I stared at the ceiling and found the only answer that wouldn't restart the old loop. I want a marriage that doesn't use closeness as leverage. If that's not what we have, I won't pretend it is. She said nothing for a long time. By the end of the month, my days had a shape that didn't wobble every time the house did. I could feel her testing for edges less often, because the map had changed. She learned that I would be kind without being compliant. I became a man who could walk through his own rooms without asking permission to feel okay. That's what silent withdrawal actually is, when you strip the performance from it, stopping the chase, stopping the scripts, letting your actions tell the only story that matters. I'm done playing. And without a player, the game gets very quiet. Guilt arrived first, dressed in concern and carrying a mirror I was supposed to look into. She stood in the doorway of the office while I logged mileage from the hike and said she felt shut out. The words were careful, the tone softer than usual. I swiveled in my chair and listened without interrupting. The script called for me to apologize for changing. I told her I had adjusted because the way we were operating had turned into a negotiation I never signed up for. She frowned like I'd mispronounced a word we both knew and asked if we could just start over. I said we could start honest. She blinked, left the room, and let two plates rattle a little louder than necessary in the sink. When guilt didn't land, she tried seduction like a reset button. New perfume, late-night whisper in the hall, her thigh resting against mine on the couch while a show I wasn't watching played. I kept contact as contact and nothing more. She tightened her grip, then loosened it when she realized I wasn't going to supply the rest of the scene. You could feel the confusion build, not explosive, just pressurized. The lever worked when I chased. Without the chase, the lever was a handle attached to air. Blame came next, as if a new label would move the old problem. She told me my withdrawal was cruel, that a real husband would fight to fix things, that I was being petty. I told her I was being precise. I was refusing to be measured by scarcity. She said I was twisting words. I let it sit. Arguments that need your heat can't live without it. The kitchen felt larger when I stopped supplying fire. Then panic. Not screaming. A faster kind. Invitations to double dates, sudden quality time, plans that required me to cancel what I'd already booked, a rushed idea for a weekend trip that skimmed over the conversation it was supposed to solve. I heard the speed and slowed down on purpose. I said I was open to time together once we were aligned on terms. She asked what terms again, like the word had changed definitions since last week. I repeated them. Respect not contingent, closeness not currency. She stared past my shoulder and said we were making this more complicated than it needed to be. Simple is easy when you hold the remote. Her friends noticed before her family did. The same two who cheered her earlier monologue started texting me directly. Everything okay? I said we were sorting things out and left it there. Whatever story she'd been telling them ran out of runway when I stopped providing the counterstory that made them feel useful. A week later, at a birthday dinner, one of them leaned in and whispered that I seemed different in a good way. My wife heard it. That mattered. The first public slip happened at a neighbor's cookout. She told a small circle that I'd been distant and needed to relearn how to be affectionate. She laughed like it was a quirk, something fixable with a themed date night. Our neighbor Mari, who has 3 teenagers and a radar for nonsense, asked calmly, "Is that mutual?" The table went quiet in that light, suburban way. I could have rescued her. She changed the subject to the grill. Later, as we walked home with a bowl I hadn't wanted to bring, she accused me of letting people think badly of her. I said I had let them think for themselves. Her family arrived at the edges through a different door. Her mother FaceTimed and asked if we were okay. I told her we were recalibrating, and that I was committed to a healthy outcome, together or apart. The phrasing slowed everyone down. Her mother doesn't like slow. She said marriage is about working through things. I agreed and added that working isn't the same as bargaining. Later that night, my wife said I had embarrassed her by being dramatic to her mom. I told her clarity always looks dramatic to someone used to fog. The most revealing day came when she tried to reassert control with a gesture she assumed would trump the conversation. She booked a fancy spa resort for a last-minute weekend and texted me the confirmation with a winking emoji. No discussion or check-in about my schedule. It used to be the kind of grand move that shut me up and made me grateful. I replied, "Looks nice. We can go once we solve the thing the trip would hide." She didn't respond for an hour. When she finally did, the sentence was a door slam. Forget it. I went to the gym, hit my lifts, ate the same breakfast, and sent my brother a link to the fishing license portal. By afternoon, the slammed door cracked open into a long message about how relationships require compromise. I wrote back, "Agree. I won't compromise on being treated like a partner." She left it on read. Silence did what it does. It told the truth we were too tired to repeat. 2 days later, she swung back toward sweetness, the big version this time. Candlelight in the dining room, reservations at a place that books 3 weeks out, a dress that could have paused traffic on Colfax. I appreciated the effort. I told her so. At the table, she reached for my hand and said we should get back to us. I asked which us she meant. The one where affection is a signal for negotiation, or the one where affection is the normal language of two adults who respect each other independent of outcomes. She pulled her hand back like the table had shocked her. The waiter arrived with water. Timing is a comedian that never gets tired. There's a version of events where a man uses his new steadiness as a cudgel. That wasn't mine. I still did everything my name was on. I paid bills, fixed the gate latch, checked tire pressure, mowed the lawn. I answered when spoken to and didn't ghost my own house. But I didn't participate in reenactments. That's what broke the game. The rules didn't change loudly. They expired quietly. She'd pick up a piece and find it no longer fit the board. Other people started seeing it without a speech from me. At her sister's barbecue, someone made a wives control husbands joke that would have gotten a cheap laugh last year. It landed flat. My brother-in-law asked me about a trail near Evergreen, and we spent 10 minutes talking elevation gain like the rest of the noise wasn't there. My wife watched the conversation without inserting herself. Afterward, in the car, she said I'd become aloof. I said I'd become congruent. The panic phase peaked on a Wednesday night when she came to bed late and finally said the quiet part like a real question. "What do you need from me?" For a second, I saw the woman I married, the one who used to meet me halfway without keeping receipts. I kept my voice even. I need partnership without performance. If you want me, want me. If you don't, say it. But don't price it. She stared at the ceiling and nodded once, small, like she'd heard a diagnosis she suspected but didn't want confirmed. The next morning, she canceled brunch with Kara and stayed home. No big speech. She folded towels and asked how my call with the automation vendor went. Normal questions. Real ones. After lunch, she drifted, got restless, and I could feel the old engine turn over. She almost reached for the lever and stopped. That counted. Growth doesn't announce itself with trumpets. It skips one reflex and chooses another. A week of small resets followed. She initiated a walk without her phone, said yes to a plan I had instead of maybe, touched me once with no agenda attached. Progress, but not completion. Then a message pinged from one of her friends, the one who loves drama, inviting her to a night out to remind you who you are. She read it, looked at me, and said she might go. I told her to enjoy herself if she did. She studied my face for a tell, found none, and put the phone face down. That night she didn't go. She sat on the back steps and watched the sky leak into the fence line. When I joined her, she asked if I wanted tea. I said sure. It was almost nothing, and it was everything. The game hadn't disappeared because I won. It had withered because I stopped feeding it. And now, in the quieter space left behind, people were starting to see who we each were without the props. She tried one last move, a half confession wrapped in a half apology. "I thought that was how women kept control," she said, eyes on the mug in her hands. I nodded. "It's how people avoid honesty," I said. She exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for months. We didn't solve it on the steps, but the performance lost its audience. And without applause, it couldn't stand on its own legs. I went to bed certain of one thing. I was reachable for truth and unreachable for games. Everyone around us could finally tell the difference. So could she. The next move would be her first real one in a long time, or the last gesture before the curtain dropped. Either way, I'd sleep fine. We didn't end with a slammed door or a suitcase in the lawn. It came down to a table, 2 mugs, and a list I kept short enough to remember. Saturday morning light, the good kind, clear and square on the wood. I'd slept well. She looked like she'd practiced 5 openings and abandoned all of them. I spared us both the warm-up. I'm going to put my terms on the table, I said. Not to threaten. To be clear. She nodded like she was bracing for impact. Number 1, partnership without performance. No more using closeness as leverage. If you're upset, say it. If you want me, want me. Don't price it. Number 2, mutual plans. My calendar isn't open inventory. We decide together. Number 3, we fix what's underneath, not the optics. No reset weekends to avoid the talk. If this works, it works on Tuesday night after takeout just as much as at a mountain cabin. I stopped there. I had more, but more gives people places to hide. She wrapped both hands around her mug and stared into it like it might whisper the right answer. And if I can't, she asked. Then we separate, I said. Cleanly. With respect. You have your path. I have mine. But I won't live inside a negotiation again. The old me would have rushed to soften that, to offer an escape hatch before the silence swallowed the room. I let the quiet sit. It wasn't a threat. It was a description. She looked tired in a way that felt honest. I don't know who taught me that was power, she said. Maybe I didn't want to feel small. You're not small, I said. You just kept choosing the smallest tool. We waved at 2 neighbors and talked about nothing. Back home, she went upstairs to shower. I cleaned the coffee rings off the table and booked myself into a Sunday boxing class. The next week was uneventful in a way that told the truth. We operated like 2 adults with a shared lease and a question hanging between them. Wednesday night, she put her phone in a drawer and sat on the couch without the armor. Can we try a conversation where no one keeps score? She asked. Yeah, I said, and turned off the TV. We talked about the small betrayals that don't make headlines, canceled plans no one admits were canceled, jokes that land like jabs, how easy it is to replace attention with control because attention asks more of you. She said she'd learned to negotiate because negotiating felt safer than asking. I told her I'd learned to appease because appeasing felt safer than leaving. We were honest enough to hear how ugly that sounded out loud. We just put our hands flat on our own legs and let words be the only thing in the room. By Friday, she asked me to go with her to a counseling session she'd scheduled. Someone practical who assigns homework. I said yes with one condition: no theater in the room, no theater at home. She agreed. The therapist asked us to list our non-negotiables, then asked us to prove we could honor the other person's without being policed. That homework was either going to be the bridge or the goodbye. We did the work for 3 weeks. She apologized once without brackets or asterisks. I accepted once without turning it into a manifesto. I planned a weekend breakfast. She didn't forget and punish me for the past. She planned a dinner and didn't make it a test. In bed, we started simple. Hands, conversation, no script. There's a difference between someone meeting you and someone rewarding you. It felt like meeting. It also felt fragile. Then the midpoint reality check arrived, the one you don't schedule. Her friends planned a night out to get the old you back. She showed me the text. I told her to go if she wanted to. She looked at me for the old tell, found nothing, and said she'd pass. She replied to the group that she was working on different things now and didn't need the crowd. The phone went quiet. She put it face up on the counter like that meant something. Maybe it did. On Sunday, we sat in the car outside the grocery store and faced the part I'd been living like a question mark. Do you want this marriage? I asked. Or do you want the version where I'm a shape you move around so you don't have to feel vulnerable? Her answer was clean. I want the marriage. And I'm willing to feel stupid learning how. That might be the bravest sentence I've ever heard in my kitchen, my car, my life. I believed it enough to try. Trying didn't mean erasing my exit. I kept my boundaries where I could see them. I kept my own calendar, my gym time, my brother's Wednesday lunches. 2 months later, I realized I'd stopped checking the climate before I smiled. We hiked without keeping score. We argued about a dumb lamp and solved it in 20 minutes. She grabbed my hand while we crossed a street because the light changed and the world was moving. And still, I don't romanticize it. We didn't transform into a couple who posts golden hour carousels with captions about doing the work. We became two people who can say no without losing yes. That's better than romantic. It's sustainable. There's an alternate timeline where she picked her crowd over this table, where the lever won because it was easy. In that timeline, I pack a bag and leave quietly, forwarding my mail and changing passwords, not out of spite, but alignment. I know that version because I kept it real the whole time. Kept an apartment link in my notes. Kept a list of furniture I'd take. Kept my head clear enough to go if respect didn't show up. The option made me honest. It made her honest too. One evening, months after the first talk, we ran into Mari, the neighbor with teenagers and a radar for nonsense. She looked at us, really looked, then smiled. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. My wife laughed the kind of small laugh that means thanks without a speech. We walked home with pasta and yogurt, nothing heroic in the bags. She paused at the door and said, "You know you could have left, right?" "I did," I said. "That's why I could stay. I don't know how our story lands for anyone else. I know how it lands for me. Respect isn't a clause you add later. It's the ground you build on, or it's quicksand. The lever she thought controlled me is scrap metal now. In its place is something simple. Two people who show up without a price tag. If that ever changes, if the old game tries to creep back with a new coat of paint, I won't negotiate with it. I won't stage interventions or beg for decency. I'll wish her well, hand her what's hers, and walk out with my name, my peace, and my Tuesday night. Because staying is a choice, not a sentence. And respect is not negotiable.
Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.